Hi, my name's Benji, and welcome to Dice vs Cards. Today we're bringing you an OCD Modern Deck Tech. So why OCD, you ask? Well, I find myself each and every time I build a deck that I place artificial rules and limitations on what's allowed. Sometimes in the pursuit of theme, sometimes just because of some strange compulsion, but always in pursuit of having the most fun playing the game, just like Johnny or Timmy would. However, it would be remiss of me not to give a nod to the spikes out there by retaining as much of a deck's competitiveness as possible. So let me ask you, do you feel more comfortable when your life total is sitting northwards of 20 and at least 7 lightning bolts away from defeat? Or do you have a predilection for winning big or not at all? Then we're here with a deck for you. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Martyr Soul Sisters. This deck combines ultra synergistic cards with a splash of resilience to create a real force to be reckoned with. So let's kick things off with the core of the deck. We have 4 key components to this deck, and most of them revolve around buffing a playset of Sarah Ascendant into a life-linking harbinger of righteousness and death. As you can see, however, we need to get up to 30 life first to ensure that happens, and this is where the creatures that give this deck its name come to the fore. First up is 4 copies of Martyr of Sands. You'll be really desperate to see this card in your opening hand, and you can only mulligan so much with it for obvious reasons. But if you're sacking this on turn 2, then you really should be seeing at least a 12 or 15 point life gain out of it, and there, in one fell swoop, you've managed to switch on the Ascendant. This certainly isn't a great top deck later in the game, but it's too good early on not to include. We then move on to our sibling duo. First up is a playset of Soul Warden, aka the Will Sister. That's going to allow you to use the trickle method to get to that all important 30 life. Remember, our life gain here is triggered when either player plays a creature. Little Sis is none other than Soul's Attendant, aka the May Sister. Again, we're bringing 4 copies of this giver of life, bringing our total of life gain engines to 12. One important note here, you need to remember the Attendant's triggers, as she insists on giving you the option to gain life, meaning she's the slightly more demanding sister. We still love her, but the Will Sister makes life just that little bit easier. Remember, there's no going back and amending the game state with May. It should be noted that this is a bit of a mash-up deck. Yeah, thanks again, Johnny. Between conventional Soul Sisters, which is centred around, you guessed it, Will and May, and the incremental life gain they bring, which delivers a more aggro mid-range strategy, and Martyr Proc, a much more grindy deck with Martyr and Sands and Proclamation of Rebirth, more on that card later, that demands that your opponent do enough damage to kill you at least 3 or 4 times before it sticks. This is where some of the deck's resilience comes from. So that's what we're building the deck around. Let's put some more substance to the soul. Ah, magic puns. The rest of our creature package is rounded out with 4 copies of Ajani's Pridemate. This guy will quickly get out of hand, accompanying almost every other card that we're bringing. You'll be pleased to know it even triggers when you gain life from the sisters when it enters the battlefield. Even if you don't have a Martyr of Sands opening, this cat soldier can be a viable alternative strategy and can easily be a 5-5 or 6-6 on turn 3. Just a real good fit for us, and one more alternative target for a deck that is fairly weak against cheap removal. We then bring in a playset of Squadron Hawk. Not only does this bring some evasive chip damage to your opponent and synergy with Will and May, but it also allows you to refill your hand for another swing at bat with Martyr of Sands. The last creature we're bringing is 4 copies of Ranger of Eos. Again, a perfect fit, as not only is it a body on board, it's also going to allow us to search for a Sarah Ascendant. Or if we're not near that all-important 30 life yet, then it has any number of other targets. I mentioned at the top of this video this deck's resilience, and this is the perfect example of it. You can find yourself running out of steam in a match, and this is going to do a good job of allowing you to keep on chugging. So that's the end of the synergy circle in terms of creatures. What non-creature spells are we bringing to complement this lot? So this is a mono white deck that would much rather not allow things to get in its way, so a playset of Path to Exile is definitely in order. I'm not sure how much explanation is needed for such a modern staple to be included. This is the removal spell in the format in white. Yes, some matchups will punish you for gifting your opponent a land, but the power level of this card is just that good. We then bring in 4 copies of Spectral Procession. The obvious tie-in here is with the Soul Sisters themselves, although I'm not sure how much they'd approve of ghostly apparitions coming along for the ride in this largely holier-than-thou set of cards. But you can't argue with this synergy, and again this brings some evasive 1/1s to the table that may just be the difference makers. An interesting side note is that this card has a converted mana cost of 6, so for example cannot be targeted with Inquisition of Kozilek, and won't be bringing the pain if there is an Eidolon of the Great Reveler on board. We then have space for just 2 more non-land spells, and there were 3 completely different choices for this. First was Gideon, ally of Zendikar, just an all-round top drawer planeswalker, with all 3 abilities complementing what Martyr Soul Sisters is trying to achieve. I then thought about Honour of the Pure, just to give predominantly the evasive creatures in the deck some more punching power. But ultimately I wanted to add a little bit more resilience to the deck, and so went with 2 copies of Proclamation of Rebirth. The fact that the targeted creatures go straight onto the battlefield makes this an extremely powerful card, as there are many different combinations of cards that can come back to the fray and do a job. So that rounds out the non-land cards. What does our suite of lands look like? So that leaves us room for 22 lands. I'm always pushing for as few as possible when I build my version of a deck, but 20 to 21 is just going to be too few. So we kick things off with a painless fetch land, if you like, in the form of a playset of Flagstones of Trocaire. This only thins the deck by 1 with the new legendary rule, but it's still going to do its bit to avoid you getting flooded. And again, another quick tip, this time from Captain Obvious, boys and girls, but don't forget to float that mana first before you play a second copy. We then bring in 2 copies of Emeria, the Sky Ruin. This won't be relevant a great deal of time and has more prevalence in the pure Martyr Proc deck, but in those games that do drag out, this is going to allow you to keep hanging on for dear life, and may allow you to turn the tide in your favour. This leaves us room with a grand total of 16 planes. I really would like to have trimmed a couple of these to make room for Gideon, but it just wouldn't work. There's also no particular budget section to this deck tech, so you can trim some of the cost of it by bringing just 22 planes instead. The power level of the deck won't be hugely affected by this change, and as they say, every little helps. So there you have the 60 card main deck. What sort of options are we bringing to the sideboard? So the whole point of a sideboard is to tweak your deck to better combat the metagame at whatever level or wherever you're playing Magic. So in that spirit, whilst I'm going to give you a graphical overlay of how many of each card I think will bring good all-round options to combat any given meta, I'm not going to talk about these quantities in efforts to encourage you to assess the metagame wherever it is you play and build a sideboard accordingly. So we get our Serra Ascendant online, or we bulked up Ajani's Pridemate to be a real problem, but your opponent's bringing a plethora of removal to deal with it. You're then going to be grateful you brought along Brave the Elements. Giving not just one, but all of your white creatures protection from a colour of your choice allows you to not only have protection from spot removal, but it also provides a defence against board sweeps as well. So this is going to be a fantastic board in for a number of matchups. Now I love toolkit cards, and next up, although this doesn't set the world on fire, I like bringing Blessed Alliance, as it having multiple options makes it feel like you've got an even bigger sideboard. Yes, you're going to be using options 1 and 3 more often than not, but even the sandwich in the middle, option 2, will have its uses. Next up is Rest in Peace, right at the tippy top of Graveyard Hate cards for Modern, and with this being in colour makes it an easy and obvious choice for the board. I've then brought Ruined Halo in on the action. This is one of the less obvious picks, but you don't want anyone disrupting the key pieces of your game plan, and this can really stymie an opponent's ability to do that. At the next station, we're bringing in Stony Silence, which is still the go-to hate card for artifact heavy decks like Affinity, and the fact that again this is in colour is always going to make this a popular choice. For our penultimate choice, Sundering Growth is a great choice for artifact and enchantment removal, and the populate ability will also have its uses on occasion. Finally, we're going for the search hate card, Even Mind Sensor, the bane of combo decks or anything that needs to fetch a particular piece of the puzzle. This resolving at instant speed is just a gut-wrenching feeling for your opponent and can more or less always completely snag their game plan. So those are my all-round sideboard picks, but here are some other considerations for you. So there you have it, another oldie but a goodie, and my take on it. Here I think we've shown what a fun deck this can be, and how many interactions you can benefit from bringing this much life gain. It's also a relatively cheap deck to put together, so would be a good stepping stone into the modern format. However, that's it from me. I'll see you next time.